Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life.
So today, my guest is Lisa Newport. And Lisa is a lady that I would consider going to actually speak about feeling great in my clothes. Now, a few years ago, I wouldn't have even thought about how good I felt in my clothes. But having connected with Lisa through LinkedIn, I started to realize there was far more to clothing and how you dress yourself than I ever had thought about. So I know Lisa has the Lisa method. So do tell me, Lisa, a bit about yourself and a bit about what the Lisa method is.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me on here, Karen. I'm really pleased to be talking to you. In a nutshell, what I do and how I do it, the process that you're talking about, feeling good in your clothes and how clothes make you feel, there's a scientific phrase for it. It's called enclothed cognition. So enclothed with a TH, not an S, enclothed cognition. And it's essentially about how we can change how we feel, how we behave, and how others perceive us by the clothes that we wear. And a lot of people don't even, like you said, don't even think about it until maybe they've got a special occasion or a big event coming up, and then it's like, oh, what shall I wear? But it's something that we do, most of us do, on a daily basis. We get dressed. So it's about the messages that we're conveying to ourselves and to other people with the clothes that we wear. That's it in a nutshell. So the Lisa method is about feeling liberated, loving yourself, and then sort of leveling up in terms of that colour and clothes. The I stands for investigating your identity and individuality. The S is for style with soul and science, because I do both, and we incorporate both. And the A is for feeling aligned and then being activated and amplified. So you essentially feel like the brightest, shiniest, best version of yourself when you've gone through this process. So you can create that $1 million feeling on purpose. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely. And what I'm sitting here thinking is that's also very much obviously to do the colours that you choose, the material you choose, even the underwear you put on, because most of us, well, I'm guilty of just going out and just buying underwear for the sake of having underwear more than anything. But I do know there have been times when I do have that special occasion, and for me, underwear is just as important,
absolutely,
as what I've got showing externally, if you want to put it that way. So I had tell me how you got into that then.
Okay, how did I get into it? So I got into it because my background is in textiles and fashion design. I studied textiles and fashion design, worked in the textile and fashion industry for a long time before I became a lecturer in further and higher education, teaching others how to do the process. I then took a bit of a career break and went into a totally different thing, which I'd always been interested in, which was makeup. I'd originally wanted to be a makeup artist. Started doing some training to be a makeup artist at night classes when I was in my late teens, and realised because of my mobility issues, I have a disability. I can't stand for very long, and there were no such things as reasonable adjustments in those days. I realised that it perhaps wasn't going to be a good career choice for me, which is something I'd wanted to do for years. Special effects makeup was my thing I wanted to get into. So at that time, that's when I sort of sidelined and sidestepped into textile and fashion design and picked that up as a career. So went back into makeup when my son was born, I'd been commuting a long way to my job, had my son, decided I didn't want to commute anymore, and began working in the makeup industry, multi-level marketing, did extremely well at it, grew a team, won lots of prizes, lots of awards, met Richard Branson a few times. And essentially, it wasn't about selling makeup, it was about helping empower others, because we all did it for different reasons. We were all doing that thing. So I learned a lot from doing that. I did that for about 8 years, 7 or 8 years. The company changed hands. It was changed. I didn't like it anymore. I decided I was going to go back into teaching, because I'd also, alongside having that role with the makeup and winning all the awards, I was actually suffering from depression. I was struggling with my self-image, with my self-worth. I'd gained a lot of weight when I was pregnant with my son and hadn't lost it. Still haven't. He's 25 next week. But it was one of those things where, on the outside, I was showing up and I was looking great, but I wasn't feeling great on the inside. So just if we part that, so that was kind of how I was feeling. And I made a decision after that sort of 7 or 8 years in that company that things needed to change. I'd been looking in my wardrobe and I'd got all these clothes that I loved from my previous life, if you like, pre-mum life, that were too small. And every day I was looking at them, I'd open my wardrobe and they'd be there, and they were sort of mocking me. They were kind of like, hey, fatty, you're too big to get into us anymore, and they weren't the sort of carrot to entice me and motivate me. They actually turned into a stick that I was beating myself up with, and I decided that things needed to change. And I went about sort of buying clothes that fitted. I've been hiding in black baggy clothes, things that were sort of, hadn't spent a lot of money on my clothes. I used to previously, but I'd stopped because I kept thinking, oh, this is a temporary thing. 7 years in, I'm thinking it's not temporary. This is, you need to accept this is your weight now, and you need to get back to who you were. So I put my clothes on a diet rather than myself. Got rid of got rid of all the clothes in the wardrobe that weren't serving me, and started to replace them with clothes that I did like, that I wasn't just making do with, that I did actually like, but actually fitted me and were the larger size, and I felt better, in a nutshell. So I felt better, and it's sort of like, it was like chicken and egg kind of situation. So because I felt better, I was giving off a different aura, I was giving off a different sort of vibe. People were complimenting me. So then I felt better, so it was like a cycle of these sort of things. So I felt better. So all that was going on. Meanwhile, I got a job, full-time employment. Well, started off part-time employment, working in prison, which is around the corner. They were looking for an art teacher. So I thought, right, I'll go back into teaching. It's only around the corner, part-time, perfect. Don't want full-time. That was it. So I started doing that, and I started to pick up my self-worth, my self-esteem again, which had taken a bit of a dip because I was doing something that I really loved. I got promoted after about 6 months into middle management, and then not long after that got promoted again into the actual manager of the education department in prison, which came with golden handcuffs of the regular salary, the regular holidays, the pension, all of the things, but it didn't allow me for any creativity, because I wasn't teaching anymore. It was all spreadsheets, unattainable targets, all that kind of thing. So my depression came back with a vengeance, and being in that sort of environment as well, with bars on the windows and all of that, and I was waking up at like 4:30 every morning, feeling sick at the thought of going to work on a Sunday evening. It was all of that was going on. While all of that was going on, I discovered that my husband was having an affair. After 23 years we've been together, and then something horrible happened at work, and it all sort of my life just kind of imploded. It all happened at once, and I hit rock bottom. And coming out of that, I thought, well, I can what I'm here, I'm right at the bottom, I need to do something, what can I do? And I thought, you know what, a friend of mine had said to me, well, what would you do if you could do absolutely anything? And I thought, well, I really loved that when I was empowering women and helping people with that. And I love the makeup, and I've got all this experience with colour and clothes and blah, blah, blah. And I've been my own journey. So I sort of packaged it all up into what I do now. So it's kind of like I created created my business around all of my skills, knowledge and experience, essentially. And I've been doing it 11 years. It was my business anniversary on Sunday. So
congratulations for 11 years. That's brilliant.
thank you. So that was it. That's how I ended up doing what I'm doing.
Which is what most of us land up doing, isn't it? It's like we have to go through this journey and hit rock bottom more often than not, because I know my nervous breakdown was my rock bottom. It was like I couldn't go any further. So now I've got to come back up. And what do I want? And we do, when we hit that rock bottom, we do take the time to really look at our lives and what we want in our lives.
Yeah.
So for you, I've seen the images you've created through your own visual clothing and such. And that's what struck me more than anything about you, is you create these beautiful images of yourself with colour, with style. Yes, makeup. And I'm the world's worst. I don't use makeup because unfortunately it doesn't like me. So it's a bit of a no-no. But then there's other ways that really I can stand out, and that is through the use of clothes and such. And what I love about you is there's a bubbliness about you, if that's such a word. There's such a joy in what you do. You're reading your posts quite often. I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I can just feel how you're just so excited about what you're wearing and such.
I do. I'm very, very passionate about what I do. And there's nothing more fulfilling than me seeing someone else who's gone through this experience that I've helped guide them through, and they reach that level of effervescence, if you like, that real sort of, it's a real work on it is identity, and it's about really showing up who you are, and and it's so powerful, and I absolutely love it, and it's and we can all do it, we can all do it. And you saying, like, makeup's not your thing, that's fine. We all have our own style, personality, we all have a recipe. So what I help people do is create that recipe. So it's like on Bake Off or anything, they've all got, technical challenge, they've all got exactly the same ingredients and the same method, but all the things turn out slightly differently because they're putting their own uniqueness into what they're making. And that's essentially, we start with there's an archetype system that I work with, but then it's kind of how do we then tweak that so it's right for you, and then you have your recipe so that you can then dial that up and down depending on the situation or the situation or the circumstances that you're going into. And you think, right, what's relevant, how do I want to feel in this situation, what version of Karen is going out there today, what do I need to put together to make me feel that way so that I feel that way in that situation, kind of thing. So it's very much about a recipe and putting ingredients together, and there's a bit of science behind it. I can tell you what colours make you glow, we can tell you what colours make your eyes look brighter. When you're speaking, you want that visual sort of triangle of communication, so you want people to be noticing your eyes and your mouth, how we can do that, how we can avoid detracting by wearing colours that are too bright or too bold for your colouring, because then all people will see are the clothing, not you. So there's all sorts of tips and tricks that we use in the science, the psychology, all of that kind of thing, and as well as, if you've got big boobs, wear a V-neck. There's all that sort of stuff that people feel better knowing a lot of the time. It doesn't really matter because it's about how you feel, but if that makes you feel better, then I can give you that information, you know. So it's about putting all the bits together to make it all work for you.
I'm going to touch on a subject that for many women is a problem, and that is size. I have ranged from a tiny 10 up to a 20. At the moment, I'm sort of 14 top and 16 middle bottom. That's a hard one to find clothes for sometimes, because obviously if you get a dress for the 14, you can't get it over your hips. And I think that stops a lot of women from experimenting with clothes that really suit them. I, for one, would have been in really baggy clothes previously, but now I've discovered that actually it doesn't matter. So long as I feel good in them, it doesn't matter what other people think.
No, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It's about what you think. And what I will say, you know, I've been, you know, I'm still carrying the weight that I gained when I was pregnant with my son. It's slowly starting to come off, but that's very recent. I put even more on actually with HRT and menopause. And our body shapes change as well. Different life experiences, you know, giving birth, being pregnant makes your body shape change. Menopause makes your body shape change. It's about learning what works for you in what way. So, you know, I'm plus size starts at 14. For size for in England, in UK, plus size starts at size 14, which is kind of, I know.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all the plus size companies. If you know, I have to Google plus size for my size. There aren't many mainstream brands that I can wear, but if you Google plus size, most of them start at size 14, which is, you know, and the average woman is a size 16 in the UK, or was the last time I looked at the research. The average woman was a size 16, I think 5'3", 5'4", and about 11 stone. So that's the average. So based on that average, based on the clothing world, most of us are plus size. It's ridiculous. So, you know, my advice is cut the labels out. It doesn't matter what the label says. It doesn't matter what the size is on the label. It's about how it feels on your body and how it makes you feel. So the thing I talk about is, rather than, oh, you're this, you know, you're an apple, pear, any of those kind of things. I use letters because there's not as much judgment. There doesn't seem to be as much judgment with letters. So there are kind of standard shapes that most of us fall into. So there are kind of like guidelines. And I can teach people those, but then what I say is, if you know the rules, then you can make informed decisions about whether you break them or not. But what I do talk about, which is relevant for anybody, whatever shape or size they are, is to have a party zone and a quiet zone, or party zones and quiet zones. So for example, you know, I'm sort of I've got big boobs. I don't mind showing a bit of cleavage. And I will often wear scarves, I will wear necklaces, I will create a party around my portrait area, shall we say. My wrists are quite slim, so I have jewellery, I have rings, and I also have, you know, compared to the rest of my legs, my ankles are quite, so I'll wear fancy shoes. So there's a party going on around the top bit, my portrait area, the ends of my arms. I always roll my sleeves up slightly because that makes your legs look longer, weirdly. And I also buy nice shoes, you know, funky shoes. So my quiet zone is that middle bit, my torso, my bum, my legs, my belly. That's the bit that is my quiet zone. So that doesn't, I don't have things with any sort of details around there. I don't wear things with patch pockets on or have any sort of patterns or horizontal stripes. I don't create, so when if I'm wearing a separates, a top and a bottom, then I will wear them the same colour, so there's no horizontal line, because every time there's a horizontal line across your body, that's almost like underlining when you're at school, drawing attention. So what I don't want is to draw attention to my widest part. So, and it's the same if you've got wide calves, you know, and you're conscious of having wide calves, then don't have a skirt or a dress or a pair of boots that finishes at the widest part, because that will draw attention to that part. So there's lots of tips and tricks like that that I can teach people, you know, but it's kind of, it is ultimately about how you feel and creating your party where you want to draw attention to, and having a quiet zone where you don't.
Learned a lot already. And I must admit, I'm probably the kind of person that likes to buy good quality clothes and mix and match.
Mm-hmm.
I do not wear skirts anymore. When I started getting overweight quite a lot, it was like, can't wear them, so I don't wear them anymore. But so my trousers are important to me, but I do not like wearing baggy trousers because I always think they make me look a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But for some women, I suppose it's having that confidence to be able to look at yourself and think, I like this, it's okay for me, and it doesn't matter that I got a bit of a bulge somewhere or whatever, because that's you.
Yeah. And if you think about it, you know, most of us are more conscious about what we look like if we're not in the zone where we're like, we don't care what people think. If we've not done that work yet, you know, then we're sort of more conscious of how we look and what we, rather than, we're not really looking at other people. You know, you go to the swimming pool and all you're thinking about is like how you look and your lumps and bumps, and you're not really looking at anybody else and judging anybody else. So they're doing the same to you. So they're not worrying about you, they're worrying about themselves. So it's kind of makes no sense.
It doesn't, does it? But
No.
we do it all the time. We think, oh, somebody's going to be judging me if I look like this or if I wear that. Is it? And it's like society is created due to the fashion industry, I think, as much as anything, that women have to be slim, that they have to have this size waist and such like. But my fascination with China has shown me that women out there can either be very big or they can have the tiniest, ridiculous waist, but they can be so big busted. And yet they just walk around quite happily as if this is who I am.
Mm.
And yet we don't seem to have that in the UK. Or
I think there's the media has a lot to answer for in terms of, you know, fashion is a thing. I don't work with fashion. I'm more about compassion than fashion. I'm not interested in trends and who wore what on the red carpet and all that business. That's for all the other people who call themselves stylists and image consultants. It's not for me. But saying all that, you know, if we pay attention to fashion change, shapes that are in fashion come and go. You know, we can look back through history and the you know, the Botticelli female was adored and loved, and that was the ideal at that time, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, the Kardashian I've got a lot to answer for, you know, big butts are in and little waists, you know, and all of that, you know. So it's kind of about that acceptance and self-acceptance, and primarily I work with women of a certain age women who are wanting, you know, who are tired of all that nonsense and crap, and just, you know, I think there's something happens to us when we sort of, particularly when we get to sort of 50. I think 50 is quite a liberating age, where we're kind of like, do you know what, I'm sick of all that, there's more to life now. And you're looking at life and you're thinking, I've got less ahead of me than what I've experienced, and I don't want to spend the rest of my life worrying about other people, what they think and whatever. And you might need a helping hand to do that, and I'm kind of one of the kind of helping hands that you can tap into. There's lots of us around who are working on mindset and all those other things that can help people feel differently, and it depends on who appeals to you and how you want to do it, to do that work. But essentially there is work around, well, I don't give a fuck anymore. It's kind of, you can bleep that out. I've been trying not to swear, Karen. But
then that's a personality that is part of you. So so what? I hate to say it. I used to think, oh God, please don't swear, kind of thing. But now it's a case of, do you know what? I will swear if it's appropriate.
Yeah. So and I think the thing is, if anybody's listening to this and decide they do want to come and work with me, they've got to accept that sometimes there might be an F-bomb. If it's, it's not every 5 minutes, but they do happen. But it is about it is that sort of, that whole patriarchy is essentially what we are fighting against. As women of an age, we start to become invisible, we blend into the background. We're not seen in the same way as our younger counterparts are. And I'm not here for that. I'm not here for that at all. I'm here and you will notice me, and you will do it on my terms, and that's, for me, that's if I want to wear sequins at 7 o'clock in the morning because I'm going to an event, and I will wear them. If I want to wear a crown on my head, I will wear a crown on my head. It's I don't mind. My thing is different to your thing, will be different to somebody else's, so it's finding out what your thing is and then sort of working with that, not about me creating replicas of me and imposing my taste onto other people at all, because I know my taste with my sequins and my pink and my leopard print and my glitter isn't everybody's taste, but it says who I am,
It shows your confidence in yourself for a start off. But it also, I think, indicates to so many other women that how you feel about yourself is more important than anything else.
Absolutely.
And I know for years and years, it's like I always not necessarily followed the rules. I followed my own rules, but it was like, I'm going to work, so I have to wear this kind of outfit, or I'm doing this, so I have to wear this kind of outfit. Now it's a case of I'll turn up in whatever I feel like within reason.
Yeah.
I'm not going to embarrass anyone, that's for sure. But it's having that confidence and belief in yourselves, and clothes should add to that, not detract from it.
Correct. And if there's nothing worse than wearing something that you think you should wear and then feeling uncomfortable, whether it's physically uncomfortable or self-conscious. You can tell people who are, when I talk about style personalities, who are innately the relaxed, natural style personality, they get dressed up to go to a formal event and they're pulling at the collar, they're tugging at the dresses, that they're so uncomfortable in what they're wearing, physically uncomfortable, and feel self-conscious, that it's about, well, what's that formal version of you? How are can you still fit within those guidelines of how you feel you need to dress? Because if you turned up in your jeans and your t-shirt, you'd feel equally as uncomfortable because you'd feel underdressed and stick out like a sore thumb. So it's like, how can we make what's the bridge between this is what's expected, this is what I want to do, but where's the balance in between, so that you are in that conforming in a way because it feels best for you, but also so you're physically comfortable as well and you don't feel overdressed, underdressed, or embarrassed, because that in itself, if you're feeling uncomfortable, if you've got a wedgie, you're not fully engaging and you're not mindful when you're talking to somebody, are you? All you're thinking about is when you can nip to the loo to adjust yourself. It's that's a real, extreme example, but it's about you being, you need to be physically comfortable in your clothes. It's Maslow's hierarchy, isn't it? If you're not your basics are not covered, if you're not comfortable, if your shoes are pinching or whatever, all you're thinking about is, I'm standing here and I'm smiling and I'm chatting with you and we're doing all but my feet are killing me, I just want to sit down. I'm not really listening.
Yeah, precisely. And then that detracts from the impression you're creating for the people you're talking to.
Yeah. And then they're thinking, oh, is she not really listening? Is she bored? Is she fake? Is she not? It's creating all kinds of messages that people are picking up on. Your body language says so much, and your body language can be affected by how you dress.
And the thing about body language, we do it automatically. We're not necessarily conscious of what we're thinking about that person's behavior or how they're standing or their facial expression or anything. We're never conscious of a lot of it. So we may be picking up something and thinking, what's the matter with them? Without even being aware we're thinking that, because we're just conscious of the energy we're perceiving from them.
Yeah, and we're all animals, aren't we? And all of this stuff being judging, we're like, oh, I'm not judgy, and it's like, yes, you are. You are judgy. You have to be judgy because it goes right back to caveman days where you had to be able to look at somebody and tell whether they were a threat or they weren't. So it's all subconscious stuff that we're picking up on. All these clues, and for some people we will take an instant, we think, oh no, they I don't like them, the energy feels off. So it's all of that sort of, and you can control a lot of that with how you, going back to what you're wearing, because of how it makes you feel, and then how you then present yourself and walk into a room. And all then you've got the psychology in terms of the color and the, if you're wearing high contrast things, if you're wearing black and white, then that denotes authority and superiority, and there's all sorts of stuff that we can manage with our clothes, but very much about that. And it's the same these days. They used to always say, didn't they, it's 7 seconds to make a first impression. And I researched this a few years ago, and the latest research I could find in a scientific magazine was 2006. And in 2006, the research then said we had 1/10 of a second. And so that's a long time ago. It's nearly 20 years ago now, isn't it?
Wow.
So we're making decisions so quickly with when we meet somebody. So if you think about what we see online, and those little pictures when we're scrolling on our phones, profile pictures and so on, and the images and the videos and the things that we're putting out there online, even without the sound on, or what you're saying and how you say it and how you come across, that's mostly body language and how you look rather than what you're actually saying and the tone of what you're saying. So I find it quite frustrating, to be honest, Karen, that people don't, this is not the first thing that everybody does.
Yeah, I know. I actually work with a professional photographer. And one of the things that she taught me was, and I've actually been conscious of it prior to that, is that image is what connects us to somebody. It's the visual rather than the actual spoken words or the actual written words. Obviously, we get to learn from the written words, and we get to respond to the voice, because somebody's voice, we can be absolutely brilliant at writing, but if somebody's voice irritates us, are we going to respond to them in the same way? And the same with how we present ourselves. If we turn up all scruffy to an event that should be quite smart, we're going to automatically react to that. So I feel that there's so much that we can learn through just looking at ourselves externally and thinking, how am I showing up in the external world physically? And that's not talking about size or anything. That's literally talking about the impression you're creating by the style, your colors, the shape you choose your clothes in. It's so important. So yeah, I'm very much about encouraging taking that time to get to know what suits you and how you want to be.
It is, but it also, on the other hand, I've seen people be primped and preened and have the photo shoots and look totally unrecognisable to what they do in real life, which doesn't do anybody any favours.
No, you've got to be true to yourself.
Yeah, because if you're presenting this image, across your social media, and or even if it's out of date, even it's a photograph from 10 years ago or whatever, and you look different now. When people meet you in real life, they need to be able to recognise you. If they can't recognise you, if you're not instantly recognisable when we meet in real life to what we've met online, what is that saying? Where are you catfishing me? It's like business catfishing. What else are you not saying? What else is not true about you? What else is, so it's about, it really is that identity piece and about you being authentic and aligned and the whole message being congruent with what you're saying. So it's no good me saying, oh yeah, I'm all about this and I'm all about that, and then sort of on my days off sort of pretending that I'm sitting here in designer clothes and what that's not me at all. I show all aspects of myself on social media. For me, dopamine dressing is something I talk about a lot. And what's dopamine dressing for me, it'll be different to what it is for you. A lot of people think dopamine dressing is just about wearing wacky colours and, being over the top and colourful, and it isn't. It's about what gives you that little boost of, that little hit. And I recorded 7 days of my dressing in the summer of what explained what was giving me the dopamine that day. One day it might have been my earrings. There was a couple of days, and it's like the weekend, it was like, well, it's my pajamas actually, because my pajamas, and I love my pajamas because they do this, and this, and they're this colour and they're that fit and they feel like this, and they do, so it's kind of, it's about all sides of you being, sort of congruent and not wearing a mask, not putting armour on. There's an element of that to it, because sometimes you need to wear certain things to give you that confidence boost. If you're a bit nervous, you're going into a meeting or something where you need to feel more powerful. But on the other hand, it's kind of, it's not about, oh, this is me all of the time, because we're multifaceted, and it's about us accepting that there are lots of different sides, and how do you show up in all those different ways authentically as yourself in terms of what you're wearing and how you're presenting yourself.
Wow, there's so much that we could talk about and continue to talk about, but I'm going to have to wrap this up.
See, there's so much to it. It's not just about getting dressed.
No, definitely not just about getting dressed. And we even haven't touched on the underwear aspect, so maybe I need to bring you back for that. Because that's another art in itself, I'm sure. So, Lisa, it's been fascinating listening to you, and I certainly have learned a lot, and I hope the listeners have. Tell us how we can get hold of you.
Okay, well, I'm on social media at Lisa Newport Style. My website is lisanewport.com, nice and easy. And if you go to lisanewport.com, all my social media links are on there. So whatever floats your boat, if you're a Facebook person or an Instagram person, I'm there. And I send out a weekly blog. If you sign up for any of my freebies that are on my website, I've got my preview of my book on there, my style personality quiz. Sign up for any of those and you'll get my weekly blog, which tells you lots more about my thoughts and processes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for coming on as my guest. It's, as I say, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and I've learned so much. So thank you very much.
Good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.